We're reading from EVERNIGHT by Ross Mackenzie. The chapter we're reading is the 6th chapter. It's called Rain and Iron. The rain wasn't just falling, it was driving down from the heavens, trying, it seemed, to punch through the world. Despite the freakish weather, Thimble Road was filled with milling crowds, sellers and stalls and horses and carts, and the racket of the slums at work. Fresh fruit! Get your fresh fruit! Here, your horse tried to bite me! Roasted chestnuts! 2 bronze coins a bag! Blue shell crab! Cockles! Mussels! Hot fish eye soup! Among the hustle and commotion, a manhole cover in the middle of the uneven cobbled street jumped out of place and tipped over, and 2 scruffy, muck-covered children climbed out of the darkness, drawing gasps and murmurs from passers-by. Lara and Joe slid the cover back into place and then hurried through the crowds, ducking under umbrellas, dodging puddles and piles of horse manure, until they came to shelter under the awning of a coffee house. The delicious aroma of roasting coffee overpowered the stench of the slums, of horses and chimney smoke, and the great many people who might have benefited enormously from an introduction to soap. "You ever seen anything like that?" Joe asked, shaking the water from his messy blonde hair. "What them rats done in the sewer?" Lara turned up the collar of her toshing coat against the rain. "Never." Her hand kept returning to the locket, making sure it was still. But that was daft, wasn't it? Of course it hadn't come to life. She'd been frightened and had a bang on the head, and her imagination had done the rest. "I've never in my life seen so many of 'em," Joe went on. "It was almost like they knew we was in trouble, like they was helping us." "Don't be daft, Joe. They're rats. They've got smaller brains than even you." He shrugged and looked up at her. Joe was 11, 2 years younger than Lara, and very small and slight, and there was a sort of quiet awe in his expression. "You saved me." "Don't be soft. Now, you listen to me. Don't go anywhere near the Milk Street tunnels again." "Lady Light save us. Don't fuss over me so much, Lara." "I mean it. It's dangerous enough down there at the best of times. I heard the coppers busted a hag over in Crippleback Street yesterday. Flushed a whole bunch of forbidden spells down the drain. Now all that wild hag magic is a-running through the sewer stream. You turn the wrong corner and you could end up as a piglet, or with flowers growing out your nostrils or some such thing." She suddenly stopped and her mouth dropped open. "I bet the rats that helped us were under the spell of some of that flushed-away magic." Joe's eyebrows knitted together. "Would make sense, I suppose. They have been catching an awful lot of hags recently, haven't they?" Lara gave a grim nod. It wasn't something folks were supposed to talk about, but there did seem to be a lot more hags around these days. There had been whisperings that even some of Mrs. Hester's white witches had run away, brainwashed by the hags. But how was that even possible? The white witches were controlled by Mrs. Hester and had no minds of their own. They lived only to serve the Silver King. Their spells were heavily regulated, produced in great factories to help the Silver Kingdom remain strong. Spells to strengthen armour, or to grow gigantic crops to feed the army, or to give life to the metal horses that pulled the carts and carried the soldiers without ever growing tired. White witch spells were numbered and labelled and never allowed to fall into the hands of everyday folk. For even sterile, unimaginative white witch spells could be unstable in the hands of non-magical folk, resulting in the most unpredictable outcomes. As for hags, well, a more feared and despised race you would be hard-pressed to find. Hags and white witches had, as far as Lara could gather, been the same people until the white witches broke away many hundreds of years ago and moved across the sea to the Silver Kingdom. Hag magic was every bit as wild and imaginative and untamed as white witch magic was colourless and sterile. Hags were outlaws, and whenever a hag was caught, her spell bottles would be dumped into the sewers. Most of the spells made their way out to the pewter sea and sank to the ocean floor, but some bottles would become stuck or damaged, and that is where the danger to Tosha's began. "I'm sorry you got dragged into all that," said Joe. He shook his head. "It was my fault. I should have been more careful. I walked right into them." "Hell's teeth, don't be so glum, Joe. We escaped, didn't we? Just be careful from now on. You don't need to add Cotton and his pals to the list of things that might kill us." "I know, Laura." She ruffled his hair, which she knew he hated. Funny, when he first started hanging around, she'd thought of him as an annoyance, like a scab. She'd tried to pick him off and flick him away, but he just kept growing back, didn't he? And then she'd found out about his poor granny, and she'd helped him out there, and now it was 2 years later, and she'd grown quite fond of him, as fond as a person can be of a scab. "I can look after myself," he said, "you know. I'd have given 'em a couple of sore uns, let 'em know that they were in a fight." Laura chuckled. "Course you would." He glanced at the remnants of the shattered dragon breath lamp in Laura's hands. "I'll get you a new one. I owe you." Laura poked a finger in his chest. "Joe Littlefoot, if you get me a new lamp, I'll be so mad you'll wish you were back in the sewers with Cotton." "Least let me fix you up some soup," said Joe, looking at his boots. "I've been on a lucky streak in the tunnels. I managed to buy some decent veg and some chicken bones and make a stock. It's tasty, it is." He raised an eyebrow. "There's potato in it." Laura's belly had been rumbling for days. She couldn't remember a time when the sewers had treated her so stingily. She hadn't found anything worth selling to old Hans, who'd buy treasure from Tosha's to sell in his shop, for well over a week. "Sure you got enough?" "Positive. Granny would love to see you." Laura gave him a sad smile. That might have been true once. Not any more. "Right, you're on." The wind picked up, howling through the narrow, crooked streets, and some poor woman's umbrella flew out of her hand and spun off through the air. Lara and Joe watched it tumble head over handle until it hit the body of an iron hart, a great metal horse made of iron and clockwork, enchanted into life by the king's white witches. The umbrella landed on the puddled ground, and one of the iron hart's metal hooves came down upon it, crushing and shattering the umbrella as if it was made of fragile glass. The iron heart was pulling a cart loaded with barrels, and Lara and Joe ran to the back of the cart and hopped on, hitching a sneaky ride.